So if you're actually subscribed to me, you might be wondering, hey Woodstock, you gonna talk about Krypton anytime soon? And my answer is yes. After season 2 comes out, because I'm making it a series review. But in the meantime, let's talk about that galaxy far, far away from a long time ago. So, normally I'd break down what led into these movies as a production, but I'm pretty sure you know why they exist. 2012, George Lucas sells Lucasfilm to Disney, and a new Star Wars trilogy is immediately announced. 2013, Star Trek 2009 director J.J. Abrams is announced to direct Star Wars Episode 7. 2014, Looper and Breaking Bad director Rian Johnson is announced to direct Star Wars Episode 8. 2015, Jurassic World director Colin Trevorrow is announced to direct Episode 9. 2017, Colin's out, J.J. is back in. 2019, I make this stupid video. Moving on. Our story begins on Jakku with Commander Poe Dameron of a New Republic covert ops unit called the Resistance receiving a hollow disc from a man named Lor San Tekka. Said disc contains a map leading to the location of the great Luke Skywalker. Poe and San Tekka's meeting is soon interrupted by the arrival of the First Order, a revival of the Galactic Empire. While the New Republic want to find Luke to stop the First Order, the First Order wants to find Luke to destroy him, and then the New Republic. Poe is soon captured by the First Order's enforcer, Kylo Ren, and tortured for information, but they only find that the commander left the map on Jakku with his droid, BB-8. Dameron is soon rescued, however, by a defecting stormtrooper called FN-2187, who Poe dubs Finn. The duo escape from Ren's ship on a TIE fighter but are shot down and crash land back on Jakku. Finn escapes the downed fighter but can't find Poe anywhere and assumes he must have died in the crash. The now former trooper travels to a small trading post where he meets BB-8 and his new caretaker, a scavenger named Rey. BB-8 and Rey confront Finn when the droid recognizes Poe's jacket on Finn. Finn explains that the jacket came from Poe and he's here to help. The trio were then attacked by more First Order troops who were there to capture BB-8. Rey and Finn make a run for it with the droid and escape on board a junk starfreighter called the Millennium Falcon. After escaping Jakku, the trio are confronted by the Falcon's original owners, the legendary smuggler / war hero Han Solo, and the mighty Chewbacca. Rey and Finn explain their plan to return BB-8 to the Resistance. Han in turn stops off on Takodana to talk to an old smuggler and bartender named Maz Kanata to ask her about telling them a safe route to the Republic. Maz tells Han to just call his wife Leia and go home by himself. She also realizes that Rey is force sensitive and gives her Anakin Skywalker's lightsaber. Frightened by a vision she sees when she touches the weapon, Rey runs off and is captured by Kylo Ren, who is here with the First Order looking for BB-8 after having been tipped off by one of Maz's patrons. Finn, Han, and Chewie are then met by Poe, who actually survived the fighter's crash along with the Resistance and their leader, General Leia Organa herself. We then learn 3 important things. 1. Kylo Ren is Han and Leia's son, making him Luke's nephew and the great Darth Vader / Anakin Skywalker's grandson. 2. The New Republic is mostly dead now, thanks to the First Order's superweapon, Starkiller, a weapon that drains stars for power and is capable of destroying entire solar systems. And 3. Finn actually knows how to get inside Starkiller's base because he used to work there. Leia in turn sends Finn, Han, and Chewie to infiltrate said base and sabotage their defenses, while Poe and a team of starfighters destroy it once vulnerable. While at said base, Rey actually learns to tap into her power in the Force and uses it to keep Kylo from reading her mind, read his mind, and trick a stormtrooper into setting her free and giving her his weapon. Once Finn has the shields lowered, Chewie has explosives set up and Rey is reunited with her friends. Han then confronts Kylo and pleads with him to come home. Kylo responds to his father's plea by gutting him with his lightsaber. An enraged Chewbacca shoots Kylo with his bowcaster, but only hits him on his side before detonating the bombs and running to the Falcon. Rey and Finn make a run for it also, but are confronted by Kylo. The duo both try to fight the Darksider for one-on-one, with Rey eventually defeating him thanks to her weapons training on Jakku and Kylo's injuries from Chewie's blaster shot and his initial duel with Finn. Finn and Rey are then picked up by the aforementioned Wookiee and return to Takodana alongside Poe and company, having just destroyed Starkiller Base. Upon returning, Leia sends Rey on a mission to a world called Ahch-To to finally find Luke. The film then ends with Rey arriving on said world, finding Luke, and tearfully presenting him his father's lightsaber. Daisy Ridley is effortlessly charming as Rey. Every line she delivers just makes me like her more, and I really love how selfless she is. When the head of her training post offers her 60 portions of food for BB-8, her first instinct is to grab all of it, but she stops herself and says that BB-8 isn't for sale, and just takes the 1/4 portion for the junk she was already selling. And I actually like how quickly she gains control over her power, mostly just because of how excited she is about her new abilities. Every time she uses her powers, she just has this wide-eyed look of awe, like, holy shit, I'm doing it! I'm actually doing it! This is a girl who's never had a lot of power, and has probably been bullied all her life because she's a little human girl in a place full of very strong aliens who are all looking to find the same things she is. And suddenly, she has the power to do whatever she wants, and then she uses that power to stand up to bullies like Kylo Ren in the First Order. Also, on a side note, I've never really understood the Mary Sue complaints about Rey. We've seen that she has combat training and prowess, and while she doesn't have any prior training with the Force, she knows it exists based on the fact that she's heard of Luke Skywalker. She's always assumed he was a myth, but she's now met someone who knows Luke personally. She's facing off with a jerk who can do the same kind of stuff Luke could do in the stories she's probably heard, and is being told she has the Force too. Based on all these facts, it's not a big leap for her to try the stuff she pulls off in the movie. The only point you can really argue about is her pushing Kylo out of her head and looking into his. But up until that point, Kylo had no reason to assume she could use the Force, so he had no reason to raise his defenses against her. And I'm willing to bet if Rey hadn't escaped her interrogation cell, Kylo probably could have squeezed her for info. So it's probably a good thing that Rey did escape. John Boyega's Finn is another very charming character. And what I like about him, funnily enough, is his selfishness. When Finn finally has a chance to leave the fight behind, he happily takes it. He doesn't want any part of this fight. He doesn't want a part of any fight. He doesn't care about this First Order versus New Republic conflict. He just wants to get the hell away from this violence. Finn's arc is ultimately about going from fighting for the wrong reason to refusing to fight at all to fighting for the right reason, namely, to defend others.
That lightsaber, it belongs to me. Come get it!
Oscar Isaac, who I previously talked about in my review for the Zack Snyder masterpiece Sucker Punch, plays Poe Dameron, and Isaac is less charming than Boyega and Ridley, and more just plain charismatic. What I really love about Poe is how he uses his humor as a tactic, either to keep himself cool, traitor, or make his enemy lose their cool. Like, for example,
so who talks first? You talk first? I talk first?
The old man gave it to you.
It's just very hard to understand you with all the
Search him.
apparatus.
Comfortable?
Not really.
I'm impressed. No one has been able to get out of you what you did with the map.
You might want to rethink your technique.
plus I just plain love how much of a badass Poe is. This dude is not a Force user. He has no connection to the Force, but he's been severely tortured, had his mind violated by a member of the Skywalker bloodline, and he's been thrown out of a shot-down TIE fighter, and then the next time we see him, he's flying in an X-Wing, blowing shit up like he's none the worse for wear. And moreover, back on the subject of Poe more or less having his mind raped by Kylo Ren, he had to make the asshole work for it. Kylo didn't just walk in and say, "You will tell me where the map to Luke Skywalker is." He had to actively probe Poe's mind. He had to push hard. You can hear it in Adam Driver's voice. Kylo is mad as hell that this Poe Dameron motherfucker just won't fucking give up already.
Where is it?
Poe breaks eventually, but it's pretty clear he made Kylo give it a lot of effort. Speaking of Adam Driver's Kylo Ren, boy oh boy have I been hot and cold on this fella. But that said, right now I'm feeling pretty high on Kylo. I think he's a superb bad guy, and what I love most about him is what a sadistic bastard he is. Like when he's dueling Finn, he's got him pressed up against a tree while their lightsaber blades are locked. And Kylo uses one of the vents on his lightsaber to burn Finn's shoulder. And you can just see the smile on his face while he does that. To paraphrase a villain from that other science fiction franchise, he has hurt Finn, and he wishes to continue on hurting him. And honestly, I think the decision to have Kylo kill Han Solo, his own father, was a stroke of brilliance on the part of writer-director J.J. Abrams and co-writer Lawrence Kasdan. Harrison Ford as Han Solo's presence in the film was a big selling point in the marketing and the film press. And even within the film itself, you can tell certain moments were designed just to make you fall in love with Han Solo all over again. And then you firmly establish what an evil little prick his son, the new main villain, is by having his father plead with him to come home and have it seem like he's almost about to do just that. And then he runs him through and actually thanks his father for being there so he could brutally murder him. And also, one smaller detail I only just noticed during this viewing, I like how Kylo still throws a tantrum when things don't go his way, but he doesn't try to actively hurt his underlings until they've actually fucked up. A stormtrooper stole a ship and escaped with Poe's droid. That's really annoying, but what are you gonna do? Wait, the trooper needed help from some local girl? Okay, you idiots clearly fucked up. And since I already mentioned Han Solo, I actually really like what JJ and Lawrence did with this old freighter captain. Namely, that he's regressed as a character. In Han's mind, if his son became a murderous Black Knight fighting for the remnants of the very empire he tried to destroy, then he clearly fucked up. Clearly, he's not good at being a parent. And yet, even as someone trying to run away from his identity as a parent, he still has those fatherly instincts. With the way he takes Rey under his wing, the way he playfully teases Finn and offers him some advice about women. And even if Han's attempt to be Kylo's father again was too little too late, you can tell he truly did love his little boy Ben Solo, especially with the way he holds his son's face, even as his son is holding a burning plasma blade inside his body. Returning players, Carrie Fisher and Peter Mayhew, may they both rest in peace. And new player, Domhnall Gleeson, all do fantastic work in their roles as General Leia Organa, the mighty Chewbacca, and General Armitage Hux. Chewie is basically everything he always was in the original trilogy. Loyal, fierce, and a brilliant presence for physical comedy. The two generals are pretty much inverses of each other. While Hux is loud, pompous, and snippety, Leia is mild-mannered, good-humored, and compassionate. But their only common trait is their absolute single-minded devotion to their cause. And once again, all my love to Miss Fisher and Mr. Mayhew's families. They're both an enormous loss to the world of entertainment, the world of geek entertainment, and the world of Star Wars. And once again, I truly hope these two rest in peace. The amazing, uncanny, fantastic, and incredible John Williams the Great is half the reason anyone even cares about Star Wars. To say he does a good job with the score is like saying a pepperoni pizza is tasty. No fucking shit it is! But that said, a special shout out goes to Rey's theme. It's just so pretty and almost magical sounding. Some props are also deserved as well. For the Falcon, a really solid piece for when Finn and Rey are running away from the TIE fighters on Jakku, and for March of the Resistance, which kind of sounds like if Williams wrote the Imperial March for the Rebellion and Leia instead of for the Empire and Darth Vader. And finally, BB-8 is adorable. That's all. So, I hate to sound like a snobby Legends EU fan, but every time I hear Kylo Ren talk about his pull towards the light side, I really can't help but roll my eyes, because A, I don't buy it. You want to embrace the dark side? Fucking embrace it. Burn a village, kill a puppy, destroy a planet. And B, you want to talk about internal conflict? In Star Wars The Old Republic, Darth Revan's fucking soul was torn in half because he couldn't resolve what his light side wanted to do with what his dark side wanted to do. Cry me a river, Kylo. Cry me a goddamn river. The Force Awakens is 2 hours and 15 minutes long. And I'm just gonna say it, this movie should have been longer. An extra 15 to 45 minutes could have been used to give more for Leia to do. It could have been used to flesh out Phasma and Snoke more, who I didn't mention until now because they're not that important to this story. Which is a waste because Gwendoline Christie and Andy Serkis are fucking great actors. It could have been used... Extra runtime could have been used to explain why Kylo worships Vader, even if he probably knows Vader turned away from the darkness in the end. We hadn't had a new Star Wars movie in 10 years, 7 if you want to count the Clone Wars movie. Which most people don't. People would have still lined up to see an hour-and-a-half to 3-hour long Star Wars movie. Hell, I'll bet even more people would have gone to see it. And finally, not enough R2-D2, not enough C-3PO. That's all. All the same, The Force Awakens is an honest-to-God triumph. It not only revitalized Star Wars as a film franchise, it was reborn as a cultural phenomenon. You have people dressing up as Rey, Finn, and Kylo all the time now. It's like back in 1999 when kids would dress up like Darth Maul and Queen Amidala. Legends fans can and do bitch all they want about the wiping of the slate clean, but I'm willing to bet just as many people have now read the Darth Bane trilogy from 2014 on as had already read it from 2009 on because of renewed interest in the franchise. And moreover, even if you miss the old canon, well, it's not like Marvel and Disney are starving you for good EU content now. Read the Vader comics set before and after A New Hope. Read Lords of the Sith, read Tarkin, listen to Dooku Jedi Lost, read Inferno Squadron, read Twilight Company, or play Jedi Fallen Order. There's lots of good shit, man. And on top of that, The Force Awakens is just plain lots of fun. And not in an MCU kind of way where characters are throwing out a million snarky one-liners a minute, but in that unique, special Star Wars kind of way, where the characters are sincere and have heart, and you genuinely want to see them succeed, and where the villains are also sincere and not just boring evil dudes that the heroes have to beat because movie. So, I'm gonna give Star Wars The Force Awakens a 4 out of 5. Alright, that was fun. Time for part 2, which is also part 8. Star Wars is so fucking weird. Our story starts with Poe Dameron and BB-8 taking on a First Order fleet solo because they're a couple of stone-cold badasses. Their main mission here is to just delay the Imperial wannabes long enough for the Resistance to flee their base of operations on Dakar, but in the grand tradition of Star Wars characters getting too cocky in their second outing, Poe decides to organize a counterattack against a First Order dreadnought against General Leia's orders, which leads to lots of destroyed Resistance fighters and a lot of dead Resistance pilots. Even if it does end up working, this ultimately leads to Poe being bumped back down from commander to captain by Leia. The loss of fighters and pilots ends up biting the Resistance in the ass too, when the First Order ends up following our heroes through hyperspace and managing to nail several members of their leadership, including Leia, who only survives thanks to her connection to the Force. Now comatose, however, Leia's position is now filled by Vice Admiral Amilyn Holdo, who Poe doesn't trust. In fact, he has such a level of mistrust in her that he sends Finn and their new friend, a Resistance engineer named Rose, on an errand to undermine the First Order from within instead of just evading them. On the flip side, we follow up with Rey as she finally meets Luke Skywalker, who, in the grand tradition of mentors in Disney movies, seems pretty disinterested in helping her, or going with her to face the First Order. But like Philoctetes and Maui before him, Luke eventually agrees to train Rey, if only to show her why the Jedi were stupid and need to die and stay dead. Meanwhile, Rey and Kylo suddenly begin to see real-time visions of one another. This slowly causes the two to learn more about each other as individuals and leads Rey to believe that she could redeem Kylo the same way Luke redeemed Vader. This eventually leads to Luke to explain that he was the reason that Kylo went to the dark side at all. He saw inside the young man's mind as a boy and saw how much darkness he already had inside him. And without thinking, Luke turned on his lightsaber against his nephew while he slept. But as soon as he realized what he was doing, Luke had awoken to see his uncle with a weapon hovering over him while he was vulnerable. And before Luke could say anything, Kylo had already assumed Luke was about to kill him. Rey offers Luke the chance to redeem himself, but he refuses, so she leaves the First Order with Skywalker's Jedi text. But back in the world of said Imperial wannabes and the Resistance, Finn and Rose have partnered with a hacker named DJ, who they found on a world called Canto Bight, and have infiltrated the First Order's flagship, the Supremacy, and are attempting to deactivate their homing beacon for the Resistance, but are soon caught by enemy forces. DJ, being an untrustworthy bugger, sells out Finn and Rose for some credits and his freedom. But back in the world of just the Resistance, Leia soon recovers and carefully explains to Poe how much of a fucking idiot he's been acting like today, and breaks down that Holdo's plan was to load the crew of the conspicuous battleships onto the much smaller and less easily noticed transports, so they could land on a nearby planet called Crate to contact any Resistance allies still left in the galaxy. But back in the world of the Force users, Kylo delivers Rey to his master Snoke, the supreme leader of the First Order. Snoke explains that the reason Rey and Kylo haven't seen each other is because he linked their minds together, specifically for the purpose of luring Rey to Kylo so that Kylo could kill her. Instead, however, Kylo kills Snoke, and after a brief battle where Rey and her new dark ally face off with Snoke's royal guard, Kylo claims his dead master's throne and offers his ally in the light a chance to join him. Rey refuses, though, and the two engage in a brief telekinetic tug-of-war over Anakin Skywalker's lightsaber, which leads to the weapon being destroyed. Back on the Resistance front, though, DJ's info has allowed the First Order to start picking off their enemies' transports. Thinking quickly, however, Holdo, who stayed behind on board the main battlecruiser to distract the Imperial wannabe, turns the ship around, hits lightspeed, and makes a kamikaze run with the Supremacy, basically splitting the fucking thing in half, which causes enough chaos for Rey, Finn, Rose, and the Resistance to escape. Undeterred, though, Kylo chases after the First Order's prey, but is stopped cold by the arrival of Luke fucking Skywalker. Wanting to finally destroy his uncle, Kylo pauses his new army's attack to confront the old man, who for some reason looks younger, and is wielding his father's blue blade, not his own green one. Kylo tries to battle his former mentor, but his own blade keeps missing its target until finally bisecting Luke, who continues standing all the same for some reason. Luke then confesses that in truth, he's still an Ahch-To, and that the man Kylo has been fighting this whole time has been a mental projection, and a distraction to allow for Rey and Chewbacca to pick up the remaining members of the Resistance in the Millennium Falcon. Luke then passes on to become one with the Force, but before he disappears, he promises two things to Kylo. That one, the Resistance is the Rebel Alliance reborn, and two, he will not be the last Jedi. The film then ends with an escaping Rey and a pursuing Kylo seeing one last vision of each other before Rey finally shuts him out. I love literally everything about the opening battle. I love Poe's back and forth with BB-8 and Hux. I love the older man playing the captain of the Dreadnought. I love the random British girl in the A-Wing who seems present to just observe the other Resistance ships and report what they do to Poe. I love the fact that Poe is so badass he manages to destroy every single one of the turrets on the Dreadnought's exterior, and the First Order only gets one shot on his X-Wing. I absolutely adore every last detail in the sequence with Paige Tico, and I love how it starts Poe's character arc for the movie. Instead of focusing on the finer details, he defers to eliminating the enemy at the cost of the pilots under his command. I'm lukewarm about Luke's storyline here, no pun intended. I don't like the idea of Luke contemplating killing his nephew, but if this was an idea that Rian Johnson wanted to use, I think this was pretty close to the best way to do it. Luke was never going to hurt Ben, but the fact that he even thought of doing something so awful, more or less ruined the galaxy all over again. And galactic peace wasn't the only thing Luke's actions cost. They also cost him his self-respect. I think when Luke learned about the mistakes of the old Jedi Order, he probably looked at them and said, well, no one's perfect. I can learn from their mistakes. And then he repeats those same mistakes and decides the problem must be systemic, because even when you try so damn hard to not make the same goddamn mistakes, you still make them. And I think that's just easier to accept. I think it's easier for Luke to say, I fucked up because I was arrogant and I wanted to recreate a flawed system, rather than just say, I fucked up. There's no more rhyme or reason, I just made a really awful mistake. Which I think is what the point of what Yoda says to Luke. Yes, you failed. You doomed us all. Move the fuck on and deal with it. And Luke showing up as a force projection on Crait to face Kylo is him doing just that. He's facing his mistake. I'm also lukewarm about the reveal about Rey's parents just being normal people who abandoned her as a little girl. Up until I saw the movie in theaters in 2017, I was convinced Rey was Luke's daughter. Then their every interaction was as if they'd never met, and then she and Kylo confirm her parents were literally just no one. Which was pretty disappointing in 2017, but 2 years later, I've moved on from disappointment to just indifference, but leaning towards liking it. The detail I really liked, though, was how anxious and just plain scared she is about the fact that she has powers now, and she's really not sure what to do with them. It's one thing when you're using these powers in a fight with someone who's unarguably a bad guy, a bully, but it's another thing to just carry these powers in your everyday life. And she wants to learn and become something greater than who she already was. But she also wants the discipline to know how to be great like Luke, like Yoda, like Obi-Wan, and not like Vader or Kylo or Snoke. And Daisy Ridley continues to impress with this role. I can't wait to see how her story ends in Episode 9. You're probably tired of hearing this from me at this rate, but Kylo's storyline in this movie was another point I was lukewarm about. Note, however, that I say I was lukewarm about Kylo Ren's arc. Now, I shall sing for you a different tune. I fucking love Kylo Ren's arc in this movie. Not because I think he's a compelling portrayal of a sympathetic villain who can be saved, but because underneath his emotional angst and his martial skill, there is an Emperor Palpatine level cutting mind. The way he exploits Snoke's trust in him and his new relationship with Rey to gain even more power is a move that would make the likes of Littlefinger and Tywin Lannister proud. And I think his spiel about letting old things die is a load of crap. He name-checks Luke, Snoke, the Sith, the Jedi, and the Rebellion, but note that he doesn't mention the First Order. His concern isn't with closing the book on old, outdated philosophies and philosophers. He just wants his potential rivals as the new Supreme Leader out of the way. And honestly, that just makes him a better bad guy in my mind. This is a very extreme comparison, so bear with me, but the spiel kind of reminds me of when assholes on the alt-right say bullshit like, oh no, I'm not a white supremacist, I'm an identitarian. No, jerk-off, you're a pretentious douchebag who's also a white supremacist. And then you have Kylo, who's like, oh no, I'm not a Sith Lord, I'm a Knight of Ren. Okay, so what's the difference? I'm an individual who draws on the dark side of the Force by focusing on pain, anger, and hatred, and when in melee combat, I wield a lightsaber with a red-colored blade. And my ultimate goal is the total subjugation of the galaxy. Oh, okay. I don't care what anyone says. I adore Rose Tico with all my heart. I love how despite the fact that she has likely never seen combat, her commitment to the Resistance is unshakable. I love that even though her heart is so painfully broken because of the loss of her sister, she is still at her post, doing her duty, and she doesn't have a single complaint about it. And I especially love that her quest isn't about destroying the First Order because she hates it. She wants to protect the Resistance because it's her family. It's the people she loves. And much love, wherever you are, Kelly Maureen Tran. I didn't like Poe's story in this movie at first, but upon rewatching the movie and reevaluating it, I actually took a liking to this plot point. Poe is two specific things. He is someone who has a very close relationship with Leia. I mean, you can tell when Leia smacks Poe across the face, that's not a commanding officer showing their disappointment. That's a parent showing their kid that they just disrespected her. And two, Poe is very used to working in solo missions with just one specific mission and no superiors to immediately report back to. These 2 points likely contribute to Poe developing the idea that he can disobey orders if it's for a good reason. Because if it works out, sure, you might get a scolding, but the mission would be an enormous success. But it didn't work out, and the mission was not an enormous success. And a lot of good people died for a goal that may not have been completely necessary. And then he tries to undermine another superior, and winds up getting even more people killed. And it's only after he's explained in Holdo's carefully made plan that he realizes how much of a fucking idiot he's been. And he immediately takes the lesson to heart, because acting stupid is not the same as actually being stupid. I really like Finn's arc in this movie. I said earlier that Finn's arc in The Force Awakens was going from fighting for the wrong reason to refusing to fight to fighting for the right reason. And I think here he's learning more about what the right reason to fight is. Fighting to defend your new best friend? Good. Fighting to make sure no one else is kidnapped from their childhood home and forced to kill others for no reason beyond conquering new worlds? Even better! Laura Dern and Benicio del Toro are both welcome presences. Neither are super complicated characters, but I like what they bring to the table. Laura plays Vice Admiral Holdo, and I actually like what she does here. She actually brings a rare bit of actual military authority when Poe tries to find out what her plan is initially. She tells him that it isn't his business because he's a captain, and she's a goddamn Vice Admiral. And when Poe actually starts to freak out on her, she tells him to take a chill pill and just trust her because she knows what the hell she's doing. And if you still had any doubts about her when you realized what her plan was, then doubt no more after she makes her ultimate sacrifice for the Resistance. In what is probably one of the best scenes in all of Star Wars. But on the flip side, you have Benicio's DJ, who is someone who is probably the closest in this franchise to a true neutral character, or at least in the movies. Republic, First Order, fuck them both. Be independent. Be free. He's like the opposite of Lando in The Empire Strikes Back. Well, Lando agreed to help the Empire, but ultimately had an attack of conscience, and wound up helping the rebels. DJ agreed to help the Resistance, but ultimately had an attack of self-interest and an empty of wallet, and agreed to help the First Order. The scene with Luke and R2-D2 on the Falcon, I'm not sure I have to explain it, because I'm pretty sure even if you hate this movie with every fiber of your being, you will still like seeing R2-D2 convince Luke to get off his fucking ass by replaying Leia's message from A New Hope. John Williams is still the GOAT. Much love in particular to the piece played after the main titles called Escape. It starts very doom and gloom, but then you get some of that Star Wars hero theme, and it turns into this just intense but epic tune that culminates in Paige Tico's Sacrifice. So good. So fucking good. So good. I loved Hux in The Force Awakens. I loved how he was a fanatical devotee of the First Order who spoke about the Republic like everyone in it was personally responsible for every single woe in his life. Like it murdered his family and made him watch. I do not love Hux in The Last Jedi. I do not love that they gave Domhnall Gleeson these big bushy eyebrows, made his hair a little less perfectly Hitler Youth-like, and did his makeup to make his face seem more gaunt. And I especially do not like that, save for one scene, they made Hux Kylo and Snoke's ragdoll. Hux in The Force Awakens was kind of scary, actually. Hux in The Last Jedi is a cartoon. Every other problem I had in 2017, I've been able to move on from to some extent. But 2 years later, the way Rian Johnson chose to portray Hux still bothers me. I already said that I don't like the idea of having Luke contemplating killing his nephew. I know many people will point to him having almost killed Vader in Return of the Jedi, but I'd like to think that after, 16, 17, maybe 18 years, Luke would have learned some restraint. But okay, that's what Rian chose to do. How do you execute the moment itself? Ben wakes up and sees his uncle holding his lightsaber over his head. Okay, solid start. Does Luke turn the saber off and try to apologize, but Ben won't listen? No. He just leaves it on while Ben realizes his uncle wants to kill him. Why? Turn the fucking saber off. Maybe even try to hand it to Ben as a way of saying, I broke your trust. Let me try to fix that. If Ben just chose not to listen because I don't blame him, then I would get it. But you just have Luke standing there with his lightsaber turned on like a goddamn deer in headlights. The Force Awakens had a really nice sense of humor to it. It was a good mix of slapstick, witty dialogue, original trilogy references, and characters just being kind of silly. The Last Jedi seems very heavily reliant on slapstick humor above all. There's a lot of goofy jokes here and there, and some of them are pretty funny, like the bit with the little alien man, voiced by Mark Hamill, who thinks BB-8 is a slot machine. But when they're not funny, they're really not funny. Not in a, that's really not cool to joke about sort of way, but more in a drunk guy trying out his act during an open mic kind of way. Why does Rey believe that they're still good in Kylo? I can understand no longer being openly hostile to him at some point. Being hateful takes a lot of energy. Being angry takes effort. And at some point, even if you're interacting with someone you absolutely despise, you just have to be civil with them at some point, not because they deserve it, but because you literally just basically cannot keep going. But that doesn't mean you suddenly start to like them. So what has Kylo said or done to make Rey think he's capable of being a good man? You can cry Luke and Vader in Return of the Jedi, but you can chalk that up to their familial connection. And the fact that Luke knew that in his own way, Vader genuinely cared about him and wanted them to be part of each other's lives. And even then, Luke never was 100% about his idea. He was never 100% sure about his idea. When Palpatine mocks him for coming, Luke says that it doesn't matter because they're both about to die. And even then, it only works because Anakin dies. If Anakin lived, we don't actually know if Vader would have lived too. He could have knocked Luke out and flew them to his castle on Mustafar and said, now I will train you the way I should have. The way you should have, or something like that. Or he could have let Luke take them to Endor so that he could stand trial. We don't know because he died. Luke just made a near baseless assumption based on something in his gut. And Rey had even less reason to assume about Kylo. You people got Andy Serkis and Gwendolyn Christie, and you fucking wasted them twice. Twice! That all said, I actually really like The Last Jedi. It is not, and likely never will be, my favorite Star Wars movie, but it's still a pretty darn good movie. And honestly, I think this is a good example of not judging a movie based on what you want from it. Although I can hear some people reply, well, what I wanted was a good movie. And you know what? That's cool. I didn't like this movie for a long time too. It's okay to not like things. But let me tell you something. This is the only live-action Star Wars movie I don't own a physical copy of it. And that's going to change soon, because after rewatching this movie on Netflix, I discovered that I actually like it now. So, I'm going to give Star Wars The Last Jedi a 3.5 out of 5. Okay, now we wait for episode 9.
3 hours later.
I'm going to do Solo and Rogue One next. Stay tuned. Like and subscribe, comment if you want to. Check out my videos for Predator, Alien vs. Predator, Joker, Blade, Infinity War, Aquaman, Hellboy, Shazam, Wonder Woman, Suicide Squad, Alita Battle Angel, Spider-Man, Venom, Deadpool 2, Watchmen the comic, Watchmen the movie, Black Panther, Justice League, Batman v Superman, and Man of Steel. Have a great day while you're at it too. Woodstock, out!